Hi, everyone, and welcome to the I Am Landscape Growth Podcast, where entrepreneurs help entrepreneurs grow faster, better, and stronger in the green industry. From leadership to sales to recruiting and operational excellence, we cover the topics holding entrepreneurs back and share how to get past those bottlenecks with the best in the industry. I'm your host, Rob Murray, co founder and CEO of Intrigue, a digital marketing company focused on helping landscape companies grow. So sit back and enjoy the show. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the I Am Landscape Growth Podcast. I have the privilege and honor of bringing Hilary Harrison onto the show today from Unique Landscape Services. Hilary, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you, Rob. Thanks for having me.
Um, Bit of like an interesting kind of spin for today's talk. Hilary is the human resources manager at Unique Landscape Services, also co-founder. So I'm really excited to kind of get into that whole like team side of things, and I know you've got some really interesting perspective and like experiences we can share with the group. HR is commonly the number one growth constraint we're hearing about right now in the landscape industry, so we'll be able to dig into that. But before we get into it, can you just give us kind of a quick, the Coles Notes summary of kind of where you are at right now and kind of how you got there over the last couple of years and what kind of brought you into the green industry and helping run Unique Landscape Services?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess you could say I married into the industry.
Nice.
I had I went to school at Western for psychology, so got my undergraduate degree there, and then from there went to Mohawk College for human resources. So got my diploma in HR. That was my ultimate goal, was to work in human resources. Hadn't thought about running a landscape company at that point.
Right.
Um, yeah, so I worked at a staffing agency for a little while doing kind of recruitment, high volume recruitment for general labor positions. And then that was good, but Scott's business was really taking off and he needed someone to help with the administrative side. So he asked if I would join, and I thought that was a cool idea. So I did. Um, he was 3 to 4 years in at that point. So didn't need a full-time office admin. So I got to do lots of the infield work as well. So I got
Oh,
to,
cool.
yeah. So doing hardscape maintenance, even going quoting with him, which kind of makes me laugh thinking back that I was tagging along to his quotes. But I gained so much experience. So that got me to where we are today. Unique Landscape Services. We have about 17 full-time staff, and I am fortunate enough to be able to focus more on HR as the days go on.
Awesome. And just for the sake of the audience, what's the like kind of core focus in terms of the business, in terms of the type of work you folks do for who?
Yeah, so we have a residential, or it's residential and commercial design build sector, commercial property maintenance and snow removal, and then kind of spinning off that, we do some enhancement work as well.
Very cool. All right, sweet. So having this like human resource slant and this formal education and experience, not to mention the fact that you've had an opportunity to kind of see the business on the ground floor, work in the front lines in the field, doing the work and selling the work. One of the things you kind of mentioned before the podcast is that career paths and developing opportunities for people to see where they can grow into is kind of an important part of maybe like growing and keeping awesome people. Can you just touch on like what you mean by that and kind of how it works for you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think kind of starting, I think it all stems from the idea that the trades are still viewed as a lesser option in our society. Landscape isn't really seen as a career option. It's often viewed as a temporary summer job that students do. So that's kind of the thinking that we want to combat by having these career paths. So showing our staff that, you don't have to just cut grass when you work here. This is your next move. You can develop into this position. So being able to show them what long-term looks like is super important to promoting the industry.
Yeah, awesome. And so, can you give us an example of what those kind of career paths kind of look like, just for people that are listening, for all the other landscape entrepreneurs who might not have anything in place? What's something they can do to kind of get started?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're really focusing on it this year. The first thing we started was implementing wage grids for each position. So it's a 2-year wage grid to show that kind of this is your starting wage, and then you can earn up to X amount in your role, and then you can see what the next role pays and what your earning potential is. So we started there with kind of the career development side of it. So there's transparency and there's no kind of questioning of what raises might look like and what their potential is.
Awesome.
Yeah, so that was the start. And then in terms of career development, I think it's just showing your staff that there's another opportunity for them to go into. So maybe it's a new role going from a crew member to a lead hand. And the biggest piece is that as an employer, you're supporting them in that development. So training, helping enhance their skills, not just kind of like a set it and forget it.
Yeah, and good luck, and hopefully you'll improve over time.
Yeah.
So one of the themes that we've heard from landscape leaders, all over Canada and the U.S. is that the most successful landscape companies are really focused on training and safety. So when it comes to a training program or training approach, let's say I'm doing something that may or maybe not working, or I haven't really developed a training program yet. Like, what does that look like for you, and like how do you build it?
It's a great question. It's not always an easy start. It can be a bit daunting, but
Mhm.
I think it's really looking at your organization, kind of a bird's eye view, and really identifying the behaviors and what success looks like for your staff, and then working backwards from that and thinking, what do I need to give them for them to achieve success? So that was a big start, was to know what we want out of them and then kind of build backwards.
And so then when it comes to like a training program, like, is everybody have to kind of go through the same thing, or are the approaches kind of different for each person?
Yeah, I think everyone who enters the organization goes through the same process, goes through very similar onboarding program where they learn about our core values, about Unique as a company, all of our policies, and then the infield training is what might look a little bit different based on different positions, but still follows the same structure. So for us, it's there's more of the orientation portion where it's internal policies, core values, and then there's the machine and equipment safety orientation, and then there's the actual in-field training, which that's the largest piece of
Yeah,
it, because it doesn't just happen on day one. It's week 1, month 3. So it's ever changing.
very cool. And so who does it with you guys? Like, who's doing the onboarding, the safety training, and then the infield training? Is it all the same person? Is it different people helping? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, within our organization, I primarily take care of the the onboarding, the orientation in terms of the policies, the procedures, that portion of it. And then we do use Greenius, which is the online training platform for landscapers.
Big shout
So
out.
we use that. Yeah, we use that for the health and safety training to start off, and then it would be either our maintenance manager or our owner Scott. He will also help in with the infield training. So
Awesome.
that we want to make sure everyone's feels comfortable and safe before they get out on site. And then from there, it's a lot of interaction with the crew leaders.
Yeah, very cool. So we were talking to somebody last week from a podcast perspective. They were talking about this really simple model for training. It was, I'll show you, you help me, I'll help you, you show me.
I like that.
Yeah, I just thought that that was a really cool way to, teach someone a skill out in the field in such a beautifully simple, approach. So, okay, you mentioned that you were in a recruiting firm and you were doing high volume recruiting for general labor.
Yeah.
And, everybody we've been talking to for the last, 12, 24 months, and even before that, but intensified recently, that, getting good people, getting staff to come on board is a growth constraint. It's a bottleneck. There's, nobody out there, in air quotes, if you can't see me in the video. So like, what are you folks doing to address, getting new people into the organization? Or are there any tips that you can kind of share with people about things they should be considering when they're looking at how to recruit?
Yeah, I mean, I like that you put that in air quotes, because I've kind of gotten rid of that narrative that there's a labor shortage, because there's people out there. We just need to create the environment that they want to stick in.
And
Um,
how?
yeah, yeah. So I mean, that's the biggest part for us. We've spent a lot of time developing our core values, our mission, vision, and I think we've identified some, I guess, behaviors or consistencies as a result of those core values that people do respond well to. Um, we as a company, you know, it sounds simple, but treat people how we want to be treated. We're not yelling at people, not ridiculing people. Safety is one of our core values, and I always push that as safety and dialogue. So you feel safe to come forward with a complaint, with a mistake, or just anything really.
Yeah, so
Um,
psychological safety, right?
yeah,
Very
absolutely.
important.
Yeah, and that's I think sometimes, well, a lot of times that's missing in the trades and these construction industries. It's yeah, it's a mantra that we're trying to break down that you have to just be tough and deal with it.
Right.
Um, so that's one thing that we are really big on is just the way we treat our staff. Um, yeah, and then it's really just being able to show the benefits of doing landscapes. Money's not the main motivator anymore. It's not what gets people out of bed. So showing them that there's benefits, you're contributing to your communities, you are getting to work outdoors, stay active, really driving home those benefits has been a focus for me when I interview, definitely. And then yeah, just really showing the career paths, the apprenticeship opportunities, the kind of different avenues of landscape. Um, those are all key points of mine when I'm interviewing. I like to kind of use it as an education session for sure.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so like there's a couple things quickly. So I'm not sure, but have you seen Ted Lasso?
No, I haven't.
Oh, well, then you've got something to look forward to. Anyway, there's this whole thing about it. You got to believe, right? And in this case, in their case in the show, they got to believe they can win. But I like what you said at the beginning, but the air quotes thing. Like, if you don't think that there are people out there, then you'll the self-fulfilling prophecy will kick in. But if you believe you can find people, it turns out they are there and they do want to maybe work with you. So I think that's just a really important mindset shift that a lot of people need to kind of get over.
Mhm.
Can I put you on the spot about your core values?
Sure.
What do you got?
So we have passion, professionalism, honesty, caring, and safety.
And so is that like kind of in the forefront of your recruiting?
It is more of in a passive way. We are struggling with implementing it into our day to day in terms of actually naming it. We do follow our core values, but um, it gets a little difficult when you try to say, "Oh, you're being passionate today," that kind of
Right.
stuff. So we struggle with that, but we do still kind of in a management level make decisions surrounding those core values.
Cool. And then when you are recruiting, then like what kind of methods are you using? Are you going out to, career fairs? Are you talking to younger kids? Are you using, Kijiji or sorry, Indeed or like what kind of methods are you using, mechanisms to try to find folks?
Yeah, honestly, most of our recruiting has been done through Indeed or word of mouth, referrals from existing staff. But recently, I have utilized the Landscape Ontario Grow program.
Ooh, tell me more.
So, yeah, so the Grow program, it's initiative through Landscape Ontario, funded by the government, and their goal is to really just to get more people into the industry. So the piece of it that helps with hiring is they do training for new entrant workers coming into landscape. So it's
Awesome.
I think it's 8 weeks, and it's free to the candidates that are in it, and they get hands-on practical training surrounding landscape.
And then
And
do that
then
through Landscape Ontario?
yes, yeah. So I think they
So
do it out of their Milton office.
yeah, very cool. And then so how do you as a um owner, entrepreneur, get involved with that? Like how do you participate?
Yeah, so with that portion of the Grow program, the one piece of it is their training, and then the second piece is they actually have to find a placement, like a job, and I think it's like that's a requirement for them to graduate the Grow program. So you can sign up as an employer to be a Grow certified employer, and you're listed on their database so that candidates, when they're looking for jobs, you're right in front of them. So
Epic.
that's a really big help for sure.
Yeah, yeah, that's super cool. And so, um, you mentioned Landscape Ontario and being part of the Grow program, but you've also been participating with the association, for the last couple of years, maybe 5 years, whatever it might be. As an owner in the green industry, what has it been like, getting involved with your kind of local landscape association? Has it been helpful, meaningful? Like, what's it been like over the last, 5, 6 years?
Yeah, it's been pretty cool to utilize Landscape Ontario to its potential. I think a lot of people use it for, get discounts on their new trucks and
Sure,
get
that
their
doesn't hurt.
stickers, which is amazing.
Yeah,
um, but what we found over the past few years is there really is a big sense of community with Landscape Ontario. You get to be in the same room as company, tons of companies that are your size, smaller, 20, 30 years in business longer. So you're in the same room as everyone. And I've really found with this industry, everyone's fairly open to sharing knowledge and helping each other out. So that's been a big part, by going to trade shows or their seminars or different conferences that they have going on. Yeah, just having that support and not feeling so lonely out in the business world.
yeah, and talking to other people that like very specifically understand what you're going through.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
then, so in terms of programming, you've got the Grow program, which we've talked about, which is amazing, right? Getting people in 8-week training, then placed. Are there any other kind of things that you kind of like, leverage yourself and would recommend to other people that might be listening that maybe they don't know about it?
Yeah, I mean, touching on the Grow program again, there's another portion to it, which is the employer of choice training.
Mm,
So it's I participated in it. I think it's also 8 weeks of training for employers just to help them be better businesses. And I think me being in that program really sparked wanting to look into more and wanting to know what else was out there, because you don't know what you don't know.
yeah.
And it certainly helped kind of make that mindset shift to, there's changes we need to make and changes we can make. So that portion of it was great. But there's also the peer-to-peer network. There's different online and in-person learning, and it's all very relevant to the stuff that we do every day, whether it's in-field work or a management business owner uh, type seminars.
Yeah,
So
related to helping you grow your business acumen or whatever it might be.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So
So
those are
what?
super helpful.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, and you're right. The community of landscapers and Landscape Ontario, but like in all the associations we've been a part of, what from California to North Carolina to Texas, whatever, Ontario, BC, Alberta, there is this weird like cooperative community. Like everybody's in it to help each other. It just is. It's a neat group of folks.
Yeah, it's not something you often see from, your competition. It's I think we all have something to learn from each other, and I think we can all gain something from each other as well.
Yeah, that's cool. So when you went through the employer of choice program, what was something that you kind of took away that was like an aha from that, just to give people a bit of a sneak peek of what they might be able to expect from it?
Yeah, so when I did it, it was, two I think it was during COVID.
Mhm.
So the years kind of blur together
It's a
there.
blur, yeah.
But there was a lot of focus on the new generation that's coming into the workforce and how we need to be managing them differently and shifting from these kind of outdated practices and geared towards I guess it's Gen Z, what they are wanting and what's motivating for them.
And so what was that like in terms of the different ways to manage versus like the old practices? What was something that could be tangible? Maybe someone could take away from that.
Yeah, I think a big thing that I took away is that um, those entering the workforce now want to know that they're contributing to something like a bit more of a higher purpose. Just coming to work and making money isn't the motivator anymore. So for me, it was being able to connect the work that we're doing to some type of value and to really show them that, we're not just cutting grass, we are, maintaining playgrounds for families. So that was a big part for me to be able to implement into our business as well.
Yeah, that's cool. I was talking to Jim Landry. He's the executive director for Landscape New Brunswick, and he said something that was really interesting. He was like, the like landscaping is truly the only like real green industry. And so he goes and does workshops for kids in high schools and all over the place. And he'll ask the group, he'll be like, is driving an electric car green? And a lot of people put their hands up, and he's like, well, actually, it's just less gray. He's like, is riding your bike to school green? Everybody puts their hand up. He's like, it's actually just less gray. Planting a tree is green.
Yeah.
Getting into the dirt is green, right? And shaping the way our communities look, our homes.
Yeah.
There is a higher purpose there, and I don't think the landscape industry has done a good job yet positioning for everybody, that idea. So I think what you touched on there is a really, really key point, and something that, because a lot of people aren't doing it, if you or others start, you maybe be able to stand out from the crowd, which I think is really cool. Um,
Yeah. That's the goal. But
yeah, absolutely, it is. So then, you mentioned snow. So in our neck of the woods, snow insurance went through the roof. How are you folks managing that, and like what does that all look like?
yeah, it was, you know, our snow division really did take off. I say about 2 years ago. Kind of like doubled, tripled our revenue in snow removal. So insurance recognized that, and the kind of the nice way premium that we were paying as a quote unquote small business was thrown out the window. And our actual insurance company that we had for 6, 7 years decided they didn't want to insure us anymore. There was, too much liability for them. So we had to search for another one. And I think the increase was like 700% on our premium, which
Crazy.
was wild. Yeah, I mean, we expected there would be an increase, but I think the biggest thing for us is just trying to hold our customers accountable and not, you know, make sure that they're paying fair, or they're paying us a fair amount for the work and the liability that we have doing this type of work. Yeah, so we're not taking on customers that just don't care about their properties and just want to pay the bare minimum. So that's been a big focus, especially in these past couple of years, is to narrow down our customer.
Okay, sweet. So two things, and one, I really want to talk about that narrowing. But first, was there any like kickback? Like, did you have to increase your prices and then go back to your current customers and say it's like this much more? We're taking on this much risk. Was there any kickback from that?
Um, no, unfortunately, at that point, we didn't have to go back to customers. I think, we were kind of already in it, so we weren't really in a position to negotiate. So we just kind of dealt with the increase there. Any new quotes that went out definitely were adjusted,
Hmm.
but yeah, we just kind of had to deal with existing clients and increase when we could.
Right. And you have been, I'm assuming, since then.
Yeah, yeah,
And
absolutely. It's
and
unfortunately this, out of a 12-month contract, snow removal is most times the most expensive 5 months out of there, which a lot of people don't really seem to understand why.
right. And so as you have you been able to maintain your customer base, or have you kind of shed a couple people that weren't necessarily wanting to do it?
Yeah, I think we kind of definitely geared more towards commercial properties. We don't take on a lot of like residential homes,
Mhm.
just because the size of our operation and the equipment that we use, it's not really a fair price for them to pay.
Sure, yeah, yeah,
So
it's overkill, right?
yeah, so we geared more towards the commercial, the property management companies that I think they understand the value in the service we're providing.
So then when you talk about narrowing your customers, like what have you done to try to make that happen?
Yeah, for us in snow removal, it comes down a lot to communication and customers who will actually meet with us and address concerns and make changes on their property to make the snow removal operations go smoother.
Mm,
Um, if clients that just kind of barely communicate and aren't willing to invest in their property, we've had to politely walk away from those ones and focus more attention in the ones that do want to invest in their properties.
yeah, very cool. So you're kind of looking for a mindset of the owner, who's not just willing to sit on their laurels. They actually want to like make the whole thing better for everybody that's on the property.
Absolutely, yeah.
Very cool. So if you from HR as well, right? Like we talk about recruiting, onboarding, career path development, that kind of stuff. But then there's also um, growing leaders, and then the inevitable sometimes happens where we have to exit folks. um, have you had any experience, around some best practices you can share with some folks? I mean, you have a bit of a unique educational background, right? Like there's not very many landscape owners that have a formalized HR education. So when it comes to exits, is there anything that you can share with folks that maybe give them something to consider so they can like make it as smooth as possible?
Yeah, so you're just asking kind of like a process for when you do have to make those terminations and changes.
Yeah, for sure. How you approach it? How do you keep it humanistic? How do you let people, go without, burning bridges?
Yeah, I mean, there's really no easy way to have that actual conversation. Um, it's yeah, no matter what way you spin it, it's going to be a difficult conversation, but that's a part of business. I think it's being as honest with yourself and with the person who you may be letting go as to why it's happening. I think it always helps to maybe admit some of your faults as a leader, as a business owner. It's you don't always want to sit in front of someone and then just tell them everything they've done wrong and
Right.
we were perfect. We didn't need to change. Sometimes it's not a fit for the business, and sometimes you have a good employee and your leadership is just not at a point where they can manage them. We've definitely experienced that throughout the years. So yeah, just being honest and as transparent as possible.
Yeah, and I mean that would probably go a long way too, all the way through, right? Coaching process. I mean, I think one of the biggest things that really messes that part of a business is that there isn't any upfront communication about it, and then it's like a blindsided, like, oh, I had no idea this was coming.
Right.
And so, being as proactive as possible for as long as possible, that like, hey, things aren't working. We're going to try to make it work. Okay, things still aren't working. Maybe we need to talk about other options. Okay, now we're talking about other options. Okay, now it's done. And maybe that's over, like a 2-month period of time instead of just one day. So yeah,
Exactly. Yeah. The
which tends to
feedback.
be the case sometimes.
Yeah. Consistent feedback is, I think, something a lot of people struggle with. We're definitely not perfect in that category. So yeah, it would, I think, help eliminate that blind side that you mentioned.
Cool. And are you folks using Glassdoor?
No, I haven't. No.
Okay, well, I mean, check it out because you have one. And so this is something that just on the HR side, and this is just for everybody listening. It's just make sure you have a Glassdoor profile that you're managing, because this is an opportunity for staff to let people know what they think about you, whether you have a profile managed by yourself or not. So anyway, Glassdoor is one that we hear a lot of times people not leveraging it, and so yeah, for everybody out there, go check out your Glassdoor profile because you probably have one, and then you can see what people are saying. Okay, so bringing core values, employer of choice, Landscape Ontario, building these career paths, helping people understand the benefits of being outdoors, knowing that the younger generation actually wants more than just a paycheck. They want to be part of something bigger than them. Um, I think, and then the mindset of like, yes, there are people out there. As long as we believe that to be true, we have a better chance of making it happen. And then there's this whole idea of getting involved with the association, the benefits that come from that, specifically in Landscape Ontario with the GROW program, which has obviously been a win for you folks, the employer of
Mhm.
choice, the peer-to-peer network, being around other people so you don't feel like, it's lonely at the top. It doesn't have to be like that. There's a lot in that. So before we wrap up, if there's one kind of resource, speaker, author, some source of inspiration for you that you've been kind of following over the years, like Hilary, what would be something that you'd recommend to the audience to check out?
Yeah, right now, I'm reading the Crucial Conversations book. Sorry, I
No,
forgot.
no, that's cool. Great book.
Yeah, so for myself, definitely in the HR side, it's super helpful. So I'm just in the progress of reading that book, but I am excited to read it and likely reread it again and again and
Yeah,
just try and nail those principles home.
cool. Crucial conversations. Well, thank you so much for doing this, Hilary. You're amazing. And thanks everybody. If you made it this far in the podcast, we're stoked that you came to the end of it. And yeah, stay tuned for the next episode. Thanks again, Hilary, for doing this.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
The I Am Landscape Growth podcast is brought to you by Intrigue, where passionate marketing meets predictable results for entrepreneurs. Remember to like and subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss the next episode. And if you would like to be a guest on the podcast, please visit intriguemedia.com and click on podcasts.